Mai angi te tupua, mai angi te tawhito, mai angi te kāwaingo, te rangi mai angi ki runga waitā, mana nui mana roa o te waitai. Huraina mai rā tō mata kia mārake rake ai ngā hua o te taungaru nui, ngaru roa, ngaru pau, ngaru pai, ngaru mata, ngaru tūua, te atama te anu nui, tama te aro roa, whawhati ki runga ki te tāhuna, kia papa paunamu te tai o rehua, kia marino te moana nui a kiwa, kia mō wairoki roki te moana tā poko poko a tāwhaki. Whakarongo rā Tangaroa, timu Tangaroa, pari Tangaroa, tai Tangaroa, mua Tangaroa, roto. Tuku a mai rā he ranga ika, tuku a mai rā he ahuma tai ko te aitanga Tangaroa. Ua ki nā mai rā te au ki rangiriri Tangaroa whiwhia, Tangaroa rawea, i te tau hau e tū mai nei. Whano, hara mai te toki ata hua ki rangi, a haumi e hui e tā ai ki e. E mihi tonu nei ki a tātou ko tai i tēnei rā. Tātou ko ta tū mai nei ki tā tātou kaupapa. O ti rā e tangi tonu nei ki o tātou mate kei wanganui a tātou. Whāriki hia ngā mate, kia tangi hia, kia poroporo aki tia rātou katoa. Tātou e whakakanohi mai nei a rātou ngā urupā o rātou mā e kōkiri tonu nei i a tātou kaupapa. Tēnā koutou. Welcome everybody to our Toi Ako today, Tangaroa Ara Rau. Kia mōhio mai koutou if you've got any pātai regarding any through the duration of this presentation. Feel free to use the Q&A function that's at the bottom of your screens. There's also an evaluation that will be sent out later on throughout the webinar. He oi anō, e kore whakatōroa i te poto. Ko rangi nui reki rangi Thomas tēnei mihi atu nei. Mā ngai, mo toi tangata lucky and fortunate to be able to facilitate our program today and share with you all some of the amazing work our whānau are sharing with everybody in different spaces. Nō reira, Ngāti piki au, Ngāti whakaue, Ngāti rangi nui tēnei mihi atu nei. And nō reira, without further ado, I'd like to introduce a kahuri kia koutou e ngā pūkōrero o tēnei rā. Ngā mana nui kei wānganui a koutou, ngā tapu, ngā ihi, ngā wehi. E mihi ana kia koutou katoa, kahuri kia koe Terina.
Ai, tēnā koutou katoa, ko hui mai nei, aho kore me ki te whakarongo ki tō mātou kaupapa. O ti rā me tuku mihi ki aku e rangirau, koutou ko toi tangata, mo tō koutou karanga mai ki a mātou te whānau o Tangaroa Ara Rau. Ko ai mātou, ko Tangaroa Ara Rau mātou, he rōpū hei whainga mātauranga me ngā ara rau o te wai, kia piki tō mātou hononga a iwi, a whānau, a hapu hoki ki te wai. Kia ora everybody, we're Tangaroa Ara Rau, a collective of Māori water practitioners and researchers who are all passionate about kaupapa wai and connecting whānau to the water. We're named Tangaroa Ara Rau to emphasise the many pathways and voices of Tangaroa, the deity of the sea, and the many opportunities that Tangaroa provides for us as whānau, hapu and iwi. As a collective, we are a group who have many years experience in kaupapa Māori research, training and education in water safety, swimming, waka, surfing, ruku kai, mahinga kai and other water related activities. Tangaroa Ara Rau was created because of the need for a strengths-based approach to kaupapa wai that is driven by Māori and for Māori. So as Tangaroa Ara Rau, we work towards understanding the many characteristics and mauri of the wai, the many different ways that whānau engage in the wai, the many benefits that being in the water has for hauora Māori. So today we've got three of us from our crew. We've got Rob, Hewitt, Ngahuia and myself, who will both introduce themselves soon and their specific mahi in our Tangaroa Ara Rau space. However, as a rōpū, we have whānau across the motu who are also involved in this kaupapa. We have relationships with community members who are engaging in wai kaupapa, and we also have aspirations to connect with more whānau and communities across Aotearoa. Ka whai. So, ko ai au, ko tararua ngā paimanga, ko otaki te awa, ko tainui te waka, ko Ngāti Rau, kaua te iwi, ko Ngāti Kapi Manua Whiti te hapu, ko te pau o tainui te marae, ko hotu roa te tangata, ko Terina Raureti tōku ingoa no otaki ahau. He kairanga ahau ki te koronga, the Centre of Indigenous Science ki te whare wānanga o tākou. Engari, kei otaki ahau e noho ana, e mahi ana hoki ki te taha o taku whānau, taku hapu, me tō mātou kura. Yes, kia ora everybody, I'm Terina, and I'm from Otaki, currently living in Otaki with my own little whānau, my Pipi Taiaroa in this photo, and my partner, but we're also surrounded by my Raureti whānau, the wider Otaki whānau, and yeah, our surrounding whakapapa and waterways. But yeah, my kaupapa in Tangaroa Ara Rau is mainly based around ko-ora, so I'll talk more about that later in this kōrero, but yeah, I'm working with our kura here in Otaki just to create our wai kaupapa. So yeah, I'll hand it on to Ngahuia, who can introduce herself.
Tēnā tātou I te whānau, kua whakarau I ka mai I runga I tēnei o ngā hui topa, aha ko kaore mātou ki te ana I a koutou, nei rā ku mihi, kia koutou te hunga whakaronga o tira kia koe anō e te rangatira e ranginui te whānau toi tangata hoki, ko wai tēnei, he uri mokopuna hau no ngā tai o te tai rāwhiti, no whangara mai tawhiti ki uta, no te waihiriri, whangara mai tawhiti ki tai aroha mai no te waihiriri, ki uta tai atu rā ki hauraki ki tikapa moana ko hako te tangata. He kai rangahau ahau I te taha o Terina, he kaumana hoki I runga I tō tātou nei waka o tai rāwhiti. Kia ora everybody. Awesome to be here in this space this morning, and thank you for welcoming us on Ranginui and our Toi Tangata whānau. I'm Ngahuia, born and raised here in the Tai Rāwhiti, a mokopuna of our lands and waterways from around here. I'm currently a research fellow and working on a project focused on social return on investment with one of our Māori health providers here. And the other pōtai I wear is I'm a kaumana on our waka Tai Rāwhiti here in the whaka. And so I'll talk more about my mahi in that space later on in our webinar, but I nānei ka ho atu au te rākau ki tō tātou nei kai hau tu a Rob. Kia ora Rob.
Kia ora koutou katoa. Takina mai te Māori o Ranginui, takina mai te Māori o Papatūānuku, kei Wanganui ka noho mātou. No reire te rangatira ka tūwhera koe tēnei kaupapa mō tō karakia. Ngā mihi nui ki a koe e tō rangatira. Ko wai au, ko kahurana ki te maunga, kahurana ki te marae, ko kahurana ki te whare, te rangi koina ki te hapu, te hapuku, te tangata. Ko ropa te Hewitt, o Rob Hewitt tōku ingoa. Kia ora, my name's Rob Hewitt. I guess I'm sitting in between the past and the future, the present, with Ngahuia Mita, Terina Raureti, and Ranginui Rangi Thompson, and Robert Hewitt. Kia ora, kia ora. And I guess this is what life is, you know. My grandmother is Te Kārere Hānara from Omahu, and my grandfather is Te Ruri Whakataki Timu Te Kuru from Te Hauke. So they're born and bred in Kakanganu, they're buried up in Kakanganu and Pakipaki. So te toto ki roto, I toku oku tēnana, Ngāti Kakanganu taki tami hoki. Anō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. So my role here in Tangaroa Ara Rau sort of jumps out at me every now and again when I get these puti having their kōrero and doing their mahi. And 16 years ago, when I was lost out at sea, well, I knew where I was, but when I was on my wānanga with Tangaroa and Hine Moana out at sea, it is myself how I connect to the water, and how I connected to the water as a Māori male, but also as Māori to survive 4 days or 75 hours lost out at sea. And what that meant was understanding who I was as a person as I'm growing up, but also decolonizing myself so that I can actually reconnect to our atua. So a little bit about my life, you know, Rob Hewitt, that's not Māori at all, like Ngahuia Mita or Terina Raureti. But if I have a look at my lifestyle, growing up on a farm, my dad's Pākehā, my mum's Māori, and being in that environment didn't really allow the chance for us to grow up as Māori or to identify with our identity and who we are. So when we're looking at this space here, what this looks like for ourselves, it's understanding that at times we have to break away from the mold. At times we have to make sure that we connect. So one of the things that I did after I was at Te Aute College, and I'll just plug this one here, Ngata Whare, is making sure that I knew who I was to be able to survive 4 days out at sea. And to do that, I had to rip myself apart so that I could connect to our atua. And what I mean by that is that peeling the layers back of colonization of who I was. So after Te Aute College, I joined the Royal New Zealand Navy for God, Queen and country. But no one told us that our country had been tailhied from us, or that there was a whole lot of issues within those spaces for ourselves. So when I'm looking at the space as I'm out at sea, I'm sort of thinking to myself, what was my life about? So for the first 2 days, it was about me unpacking my life and making sure that when I did connect to wānanga with Tangaroa and Henimona, that I was doing it from the right place. So where I was in a place called Mana Island, going up towards Kapiti. And I ended up in a current called Kahitara Oterangi, which is out by Otaki, where Terina lives at this point in time. Now, one of the things that I did see and that I did connect to out there was I thought I saw this mermaid, this long flowing, this Māori lady with long flowing hair. At this point in time, I had never heard of Kahitara Oterangi. And what had happened was that after I was rescued, the Royal New Zealand Navy, and all their good stead, said to me, hey, look, you need to go do go see a psychologist. You know, you might be a bit out there. So I went to see a psychologist, but what I actually needed, and I had a friend called Haimona Winterburn, and he was one of our Te Reo Kaiako. And he said that you need to come back to Otaki and you need to talk to the whānau at Ngāti Raukawa. So there were kaumata kuia there. And they talked to me about the area where I was having my wānanga with Tangaroa and Henimona. And then from that space there, they said that you know, it was our tipuna, Kahitara Oterangi, it was our atua that looked after you while you were floating around in our backyard. So for me, that made sense. As I'm moving through my journey and my life, there were little points there throughout the 75 hours that made sense. And when it did make sense, everything just moved in together. So it was making sure that after the 2 days of decolonizing myself was to bring myself into and to connect to our atua, Tangaroa and Henimona, and moving into those spaces where I could truly connect through the power of wānanga, or putting myself into a space of te kore. And then moving from te kore, having an enlightenment of who I was as a person. And a lot of people after my rescue were saying, oh, it must have been your Navy training, it must have been this, it must have been that. But no one actually talked about, oh, it might have been because you're a Māori. It might have been that you connected to your atua. So when I'm looking back at that, I pointed out to the whānau. When I say the whānau, I mean the media and the news and stuff like that. Hey, Toi Ako, this is who I am. Hey, it was I was able to walk in both worlds to be able to survive 75 hours out at sea, but also to connect to our atua. So that was 16 years ago. Yeah, when I'm looking at health and mental health and what does it look like for ourselves, you know, there's something in there that what I had to do was connect to the water, both spiritually, mentally, and physically. So I entered the water at 95 kgs. 4 days later, I lifted 115 kgs. So Tangaroa had saturated me. Tangaroa had been in my body, replacing all of the water that was in there with salt water or waiti waita. Now, after I was rescued, there was a sort of she'll be right mentality, number 8 wire, once bitten, twice shy. So there was no way that I was going to go back into the water or be anywhere near the water. So I moved into rugby league because I don't think that if I was in the water again or by the water that I would survive this again. So I moved into rugby league. Being the brother of an All Black, I wanted some photos and stuff like this as well. I wanted a silver fern on my chest, so I moved into managing Junior Kiwis New Zealand Māori Rugby League at the first inaugural Indigenous game with the Tangata Moimoia, and assistant manager for the Kiwis at 2 World Cups. Why? Behind me, the reason was I didn't want to be in the water or by the water. It wasn't until this guy Dieter Pollmann from Germany who contacted me and said, hey, look, I want you to help build and train 7 double hull waka. And there was a guy called Zach McQuarrie who said to me, oh, there's a waka that's being built. And I thought, nah, I don't want to do this. 4 days later, the German guy rings me up. Come over here, talk to me. I want you to be my training manager. I want to sail the South Pacific for 2 years and follow whales. I said, well, I don't like sailing. Hey, I don't like sailing. I like to sail on a big grey ship called a frigate with a couple of guns up front. So when what I'm doing is I'm hiding, and I'm trying to hide from my responsibilities. My partner at the time said, hey, this would be a good opportunity for you to get back to Tangaroa and Hene Moana, who allowed you or who gave you the strength to survive within their domain. So I did. Yeah, I trained 1,200 people, Ngahuia being one of them, later on down the track. And we sailed for 2 years from New Zealand to Whakarawa, Nukuhiva, Hawaii, San Francisco. And it was in that space there that I realized that Māori and Pacific were at the pointy end of all drownings. And I couldn't understand why, because of the connection that we have. So came from this, working with whānau members like Zach McQuarrie and Taitimu, working with Mark Petikahu over at Marapi Tuatini, and then creating those relationships was the first time that I met Anne-Marie Jackson at one of those wānanga. And then from there, we had conversations about how do we move the space into something where our practitioners and researchers can move into collaborating together. And then what does that look like for ourselves, first and foremost, and then what does it look like for our whānau out in the communities? So things that we do from the beginning right through to the spaces on where we're today is running boating courses, day skipper courses. We also do connect our whānau through diving. We've got some links up there you can have a look at later on with the Pokai dive programs that we're running. And then also identifying at Water Safety New Zealand what the data is telling us as well. So the data tells us that Māori are drowning, Māori men are drowning collecting seafood. We're not drowning in swimming pools, we don't drown between the flags. We drown kui kai, whether that's scuba diving, whether that's free diving, snorkeling, rock fishing, and or boat fishing. You know, this is where we're drowning. So it's about making sure that the whānau that are out there doing it, we train them to our best ability to give them some mātauranga, both mātauranga Pākehā, mātauranga Māori, and get a tohu and get tickets so they can be champions for our whānau. And a lot of times I hear stories where, oh, my dad, my uncle just chucked me in the water and said swim, or chuck this bottle on your back, go down and get the kai, but don't beat your bubbles up. Yeah, so there are all of these kōrero that's going around for our whānau on how they were taught by their uncles or by their dads, by their brothers, on how to engage the realm of Tangaroa and Hene moana to get kai. So in that space there, you know, when I met up with Ngahuia and Terina and Chanel Phillips, who created the Waipuna model with the support and tautoko of our community leaders. And then with the Waipuna model, where I sit at Water Safety New Zealand, we embedded that within the Pākehā framework of Water Safety New Zealand. We now also embed that within Land Search and Rescue. And at the moment, we're doing a search and rescue review for Minister of Transport, where a Māori framework of the Waipuna model is being embedded in that space there. And the Waipuna model, there's links to that model on our website, but also on links here, is how do we as Māori connect to the waterways through whakapapa, mātauranga and tikanga. And talking to the practitioners and putting that into practice ourselves. So that's what we're looking at doing, and that's what we look at doing for our whānau. It's very much a whānau-led kaupapa, a community-led kaupapa, i.e. a couple of weeks ago I'm down in Bluff talking to the whānau down in Bluff what they want, which is completely different to where I was last week, where I'm up in Auckland talking to the whānau up there and the community, the hapu of Ngāti Wai, what they want. And what I'm seeing is that it all revolves around the tai ao. Whether it's about sediment, whether it's about different seaweed, and understanding our connection as tangata to the tai ao. The tai ao is all right, then we're all right as a people. And as we can see with climate change and everything like that, moving into these spaces, sustainability of ourselves and sustainability of our environment is at top for our whānau. So, koe nā tērā kōrero, ki roto I tēnei kaupapa. So that's just the start of Tangaroa Ara Rau and how we sort of transpired from being practitioners around the country to connecting up with researchers, academics, scholars, but also other young Māori whānau, both tāne and wahine, to create a space called Tangaroa Ara Rau. And as I mentioned in my first kōrero, in the first couple of minutes, you know, I'm a product of Te Aute College, Ngata Whare. And Ngata Whare was named after Apiranga Ngata, who one of his kōrero was how he had the pen in one hand and the taiaha in the other. And how do we bring those two spaces together, you know? And Tangaroa Ara Rau are doing that at the moment with Water Safety New Zealand. Tangaroa Ara Rau are doing that at the moment with Maritime New Zealand. Tangaroa Ara Rau are doing that at the moment with our hapu and our iwi and our fisheries, but also with our Māori providers around the country. So that's how we started. That's a little bit of a whakapapa of our mahi, and I'll hand over to our next kōrero. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Rob. Yeah, awesome to hear that kōrero from you, Anō. Terina and I've obviously been part in this whānanga a number of times, but yeah, every time Rob shares that kōrero, it really does ground Tangaroa Ara Rau, this kaupapa, and all of our work in, on, and around the wai. Just how meaningful and important it is to all of our whānau. So just to, I guess, bring a number of those things that Rob spoke about together. So Tangaroa Ara Rau, as Rob pointed out, we came together as a collective. And so these are just a number of our po, I guess, in these areas that we work within in between. And so the first one I wanted to speak about was around our communication. And so I've just got an image here. These are from the very early days of Tangaroa Ara Rau as this collective, and as Terina explained at the beginning, that draws in a number of other whānau and communities that aren't here with us on screen today, but myself, Terina and Rob are just the māngai for our rōpū. But what we have here is our 12 days of Ngahuia Mita, and so this campaign sort of sparked up our online presence, I guess, in a way to bring ourselves together. And these images are from our early days of wanting to change the narrative around messaging and the why. This really came out of a discontent amongst us, really, of water safety messaging and what was out there, and not seeing ourselves, our whānau and our communities represented in that imagery and that messaging about whānau and the why. As we all know, and as we can see here, many of the images, we've got Rob there demonstrating correct use of a life jacket in the bath. We've got our whānau on their smaller sailing vessels, Hau Te Ruku ki Puke Te Raki, our whānau based down in the deep south in Karitane, a really important part of our rōpū. We've got Dr. Jordan Waiti over there in Whangaro, obviously as representation of rangatiratanga through surfing. And then we have up here Anani and her moko enjoying the wai. And so we wanted to put these series of images out over that Raumati period. Back then, I think it was about 2018, around then. And that was just really to flip the script and shift the narrative around what it is we actually do and how we engage with the why, rather than messaging around safety in our different environments being sort of put onto us. Our leadership, Rob's really spoken about that. And so since that time when Rob had his wānanga with Tangaroa, he's really been a beacon for us as Māori within the water safety sector and space. And so Rob provides leadership well across the sector to a number of national organisations and also intergovernment agencies, as he's spoken about. Rob, alongside other kaihotu within our kaupapa, such as Peririka Makiha, so he's based over at Coast Guard, and then we have Professor Emery Jackson, also that's within Water Safety New Zealand, and being able to impact in their leadership. And so that's probably more of the unseen mahi that goes on, where we've got our communication and branding, and we'll share out our social media links and website and that further on in our corridor. But then also there's really important conversation and impact happening at a leadership level. Research or rangahau, again, Rob spoke about in the early days, I guess, partnering with Anne-Marie and our hononga through Te Koronga Research Excellence Rōpū and the University of Otago, and now into our Coastal Peoples Southern Skies Centre of Research Excellence. So there's a number of, alongside the important mahi that Rob and others are doing on the ground, we have a number of research projects ongoing. And so Terina and I will speak in short about some of our mahi that we've been doing around waka, around these Māori understandings of swimming. We've got whānau doing ruku kai and high water research. And that really is the ngako of all of this study, is telling our important whānau stories from a strengths-based perspective of how we engage with the why, and also that real central importance of high water. For us, it's less about focusing purely on the measures of safety, I guess, and actually looking at that, as we all know, holistically, how does engaging with our spaces and places in the why contribute to our health and well-being. And then finally, looking at training and our practitioners. So Rob spoke about sort of the pathways and training through Coast Guard boating education and a number of other outfits where we're able to influence in this space and allow whānau a way into this space, and we're constantly trying to grow the numbers of tutors, for example, our whānau that are able to run dive kaupapa, so that our communities are armed with their own to be able to teach their own, and adding tickets, I guess, alongside the long-standing mātauranga that our communities, whānau and hapu hold. And then we've got our awesome practitioners. So a number of our rōpū, and I saw one there on the screen earlier raising his hand. So I'll just give a mihi out to Peter Boyd there on his birthday, and Ngāti Porou Surf Lifesaving. But amongst our collective, we have a number of awesome practitioners that are actually just out there doing the mahi every day. And so part of our work is to support those practitioners to link, as Rob spoke about, what is happening out there in terms of diving, in terms of swimming, in terms of waka, being able to wrap some research support around that, and then up into the leadership, and then finally communicating that out. So that's just a sort of insight into these main pou of Tangaroa Ara Rau and what we're about. At the moment, we have many different roles, and as you've heard Rob speak about, he wears many different pōtai around the motu. So we're really looking at how we can grow Tangaroa Ara Rau and to bring more of our whānau along, so that that can sort of become established as an organisation on its own, and so that we can really get behind supporting each of these pou that we've got on here. So tētahi taha oku. So obviously today our kōrero is around these ara rau of Tangaroa and how we give voice to our whānau in our communities and the mahi that's happening out there. So for me, I guess the ara rau or Tangaroa is in this space, te ao waka. And so my story around the why and engaging with Tangaroa will be similar to a number of our whānau online here in Hurinoi Te Motu, sort of finding my way into connecting with the why through waka ama originally as a little tamaiti, which is a very similar story to a number of us up here in the Tairāwhiti. And really, I guess for us growing up, seeing and interacting with Tangaroa and through our waterways in this way, and beginning to learn that for us was one of the ways that we found hauora, but also learned how to conduct ourselves around the why. So for me, that was a sort of entry point, both into, I guess, this mahi that we're doing now and interacting with the why, and then also i te taha rangahau, so on the research pathway as well. So my first sort of introduction into research was looking at I guess moving away from the competitive understandings of waka ama and into looking at actually what are these benefits for hauora that we find through engaging with the why through waka. And then more recently, I've just got up here Tairāwhiti Waka, Tairāwhiti Tangata. So this is the title for my PhD thesis that I've recently completed, and this here is our waka Tairāwhiti, the pōtiki of all our waka haurua, alongside her tuakana there in Mahia. And so that specific rangahau was looking at into our waka haurua, which again Rob introduced and spoke about, and how we can, the study itself looked at some of our pūrākau whakapapa up here in Te Tairāwhiti, and how we can draw on those basically as a guide to understanding how we might understand ourselves as voyagers today here in Tairāwhiti, but also what are the hauora benefits for us and our whānau up here on the coast through engaging with waka haurua. Presently, there's a lot of, both in the hauora sector and all across many of our sectors, the use of waka, I guess, as metaphors. However, for all of us as Māori and as those that connect with waka, we know that the physical act of whether it be paddling or sailing our waka actually has immeasurable benefits for our hauora, and is a really awesome way, especially for our tamariki, to engage in a safe way with Tangaroa and Hine moana, and begin to understand what that relationship looks like. And so how I've sort of found myself again in this space and alongside our rōpū here is through the mentorship of Rob, being able to sort of come into the space of teaching as well and upskilling whānau. And so alongside Rob, Peririka and others, I'm a tutor for Coast Guard boating education, so able to run our day skipper kaupapa, mostly with our rangatahi and our whānau, and then the waka ama safety basics, which is another Coast Guard boating education accredited course run through Waka Ama New Zealand. And the ngako of that really is to enable whānau to enter these spaces and gain these qualifications in a way that makes sense for us. And so that's really led out by Rob, coming to the many settings he's just spoken about, whether it be marae, whether it be waka ama clubs, or just into whānau and where they're at. And so bringing this other mātauranga to sit alongside, often whānau have a long-standing connection and experience with the wai, but bringing CB or in these tickets alongside whānau to enable we're fully wrapped around with our haumarutanga i te wai. But ko ai te rai te whānau, and if there's any questions around that, we can roll into them later, but I'll pass back over to Terina, who's going to speak about her mahi.
Tēnā koinga. Ai kia ora anō whānau. So kaora, yeah, it's another ara rau, as Ngā was talking about, of our Tangaroa Ara Rau kaupapa. This is a product of my PhD mahi, where my intention was just to define swimming for us as whānau and as Māori, based off our pūrākau, our mātāpono, and how we use swimming in a modern day. But yeah, so kaora was a kupu that I created to define swimming for us, and it's made up of the two words ko and ora, just to mean, so ko to mean swimming and ancestor, and ora is just around that emphasizing life and wellness. And so it's just about that connection that we have to our ancestors and our whānau through swimming to enhance whānau health and well-being. And yeah, it's primarily really achieved through these three key po that I've got up here. So koko, or swimming as play, kohoi, swimming as providing, and kotiaki, swimming as protection. So koko, or swimming as play, is around encouraging us as whānau to spend time together in and around our ancestral waterways, such as our awa, just enjoying the water, playing in and around the rocks, just like my nephews are doing here, enjoying the flow of the currents, the different depths and the different characteristics of the water. Kohoi is around swimming as providing, and that kai gathering practice that we as whānau do. So it's just around having that pukinga, so that we're successful in all of our practices. So we have that extra pukinga to go diving, carrying nets when you're swimming across the awa, just carrying nets of fish back in our buckets, swimming around with our spears in the river mouth and things like that. Yeah, it just also encourages us to learn about our waterways and the tohu, the tides, and just knowing when it's an appropriate time to be successful out in the water. And kotiaki, or swimming as protection, is just around that protection element that swimming has. So for our whānau, it's just a tikanga that when you go out to the water, or if you're in and around the water, you must know how to swim, just to demonstrate that respect for the wai. And so knowing that if you're in the water, you're comfortable and you're enjoying yourself, and that you have that knowledge just to keep you and your whānau safe. So kaora has like a theory and praxis kaupapa. In praxis, it's called kura kaora, just to describe the education element that we have behind the kaora as a theory. And so currently that looks like these two who are in this photo. These are my two nephews that I take twice a week after kura. We take them to the awa in the summertime, and at the moment we're at the pools just to maintain that connection with the wai and just to build on their pukinga. But in the coming months, for my postdoc mahi that I'm doing at the moment, I get to work with my kura here, Te Kura Iwi o Whakatupu Rangarua Mano, where we're going to trial out kura kauora as a wai kaupapa for the kura, so that our kura have a wai and a swimming kaupapa that resonates with them and resonates with how they use the water, engage in the water, and that can strengthen their connection to their tūpuna awa, which is Otaki awa here in Otaki. And so, yeah, in these kauora kaupapa that we're doing at the moment, I'm just creating some pukinga that are based on our ancestral stories. And so the pukinga that they're learning, they're different in the pool and the awa at the moment, but I'm still working on developing these. And it's just around learning this kauora skills that they need to enjoy their time in the water. The main thing is just that they are safe, comfortable, and they're enjoying their time, and they're encouraged to go out in the water and enjoy the healing properties, the fun, the enjoyment, and the comfort of just being connected with their tūpuna awa. So some of the pukinga, like an example that one of the pukinga that they'll be learning is around swimming the width of the awa, and that's just so that if they get into situations where they have swam out of their depth, or they are finding that they're just a bit far offshore, they actually are aware of how they know that they're able to get back home. And that's kind of based off our ancestral stories of Kahe Te Rauterangi that Rob mentioned earlier, and Hini Popo, who swam from Kapiti Island back home for their different reasonings, but having that ability to actually be able to do that, and having that mana to know that that's part of who we are as Māori, is that we are able to swim, be comfortable, and enjoy our wai space. So yeah, that's a little summary of what kauora is and how we are moving kauora forward this year and in the coming years. But yeah, the main aim of kauora is just for whānau to find comfort in the wai, to feel the healing properties that the wai possess, and to feel that connection that the water has between our whānau, our tinana, and our whānau, our wairua. Because as Māori, we've always been great swimmers, and we've always had that strength in our water-related activities, but there has been a disconnect where our kaupapa, when we go up to the pools and our learn to swim programs, aren't nurturing our mātauranga and our whakapapa. So this kaupapa is just about bringing us as Māori to the forefront of how we engage with the water. And it's just, yeah, it's a kaupapa that is still ongoing and it's still developing. So yeah, that's just another one of our research kaupapa that we have here in Tangaroa Ara Rau. So that's kauora, and I'll hand it back over to Rob.
Hey, kia ora whānau. So this is one of the branches here of Tangaroa Ara Rau and sustainable fishing and what that looks like. So last week we got some SFFF funding because we knew that there was an issue down in Ngāti Kakanganui from Mahi down to Wairarapa, which is a pilot on sustainable fishing. And when we're talking about fishing, we're talking about mussel, paua, crayfish, all of the kai, all of the mokai of Tangaroa and Hene Moana. And what's our responsibility? What's our responsibility in that space when we look at that to partner up with our whānau? So this is an award that we got from the mahi that we've been doing from that space, and it's with MPI. So as Ngahuia mentioned, we do have a bit of a reach moving around into these different government organisations and let them know that within the fisheries, you have your commercial, you have recreational, and you have customary. So we're purely looking at that customary space. Yeah, so if we can play the next video clip, because I know we've got 10 minutes left for a bit of part-time.
It's healthy for my mental health. I'm detoxing my body, my wairua, and my hene ngaro to a point where I become one with the water.
And I think that's one of the takeaway notes within that. So to a point that we become one with the water, that we can reconnect our wairua, our hinengaro, you know, and there's plenty of kōrero with Professor Mason Jury, or Sir Professor Mason Jury with his tapa whā, and how we connect that. You know, one of the things I want to look at is that word ruku kai. So if we have a rahui on kai, then what does that look like for us? Will we still go diving in the water? Kai o te hinengaro, kai o te ngākau, kai o te rangatira. When we're looking into those spaces. So here's some courses and also some website details that we've got. And I'll hand back to Ngahuia to open up, or to Ranginui to open up for any part-time. Kia ora.
Ka pai tēnā koutou I te hira o tēnei kaupapa. As you can see, there are a few pātai in there. I've got a couple myself, engari kia tahuri ki e te hoi nei pātai. One being, what does the advocacy role look like towards the mainstream water organisations like New Zealand Water Safety, Drowning Prevention, Surf New Zealand, etc. Are Māori sitting at the highest decision-making levels within those organisations? If not, how do we make it happen? Kia ora, Kāla, tēnā koe I tō pātai.
Kia ora Ngahuia.
Oh, I was going to chuck the ball over to Rob here. Engari, kia ora Kāla, tēnā koe. As I kind of spoke about, there's a number of mahi going on behind the scenes, and we are moving a lot more of our whānau into these leadership and governance positions. And perhaps, Rob, you want to speak about some of your mahi?
Yeah, hey, kia ora ngā mihi. So when I came into the space about 3 years ago at that higher level, the first thing I wanted to unpack was with the Whitewater Leadership Group. There are 12 groups there in the water safety sector. I wanted to find out how many Māori are sitting on those boards. And from the 66 people that were sitting on those boards, 11 were Māori. And 2 were Pacifica and 1 was Asian. So when we're looking at equality and inequality, that spoke volumes. So 2-3 years now, we've got, I think we have moved from 11 Māori on those different boards to now having 22 Māori on those boards, with 3 Māori being chairmen. Making sure that we have those, we have that part-time, that kōrero when we talk about, and our partnership and the treaty, our partners understand. When we talk about we want to be around the table, this is the table we want to be around. So my role is to put kaihotu in these water safety and land safety sectors. Yeah, but I can't do that if they don't have any support around the table. So now at Water Safety, we have 3 Māori on the board. Coast Guard, we have 4 Māori on the board, and so on. So it's about infiltrating and facing up kanohi to kanohi to the board members of those boards and say, what is your responsibility to Māori as a treaty partner, and working our way through that. Kia ora.
There are 2 pātai that are quite similar here. One being, does anyone in your rōpū include mahi on water quality, I te Toi Ako, swimming and ecological? Engari, there's also a pānga of that to this next pātai. I'm moving into my Masters in 2024 and exploring whakapiki I te Māori o Tangaroa, restoring the Māori of Tangaroa, study of revitalising traditional methods for restoring the health and vitality of Tangaroa. In my thesis, I'm exploring many aspects of the revitalisation of Tangaroa, but more importantly, focusing on the relationship between kai and health within our Māori communities, specifically within the Eastern Bay of Plenty, where kaimoana is the main source of sustenance. I'd love to hear any whakaaro and advice about being in this space.
Kia ora. Yes, I think I saw one of the pātai come through during the kōrero, and that awesome pātai around the Masters. I guess firstly to the point around water quality testing and that kaupapa, I think for me, first of all, when I saw that pātai come through, and And perhaps it would have been heard throughout many of the kōrero. One massive kaupapa for us is that we're really keen on listening to te reo te kāinga. And so in our experience, a number of the communities we work alongside, that they really, and we feel it, when our waia's Māori, so too are we. And so we've felt and experienced that in some of the different spaces that we've entered into. I mentioned earlier Hau te ruku ki puke te raki. So there's some of our whānau, the Flack whānau based in the deep south in Karitane, and we've worked alongside them for a number of years. A cool part of their kaupapa is that they've done some mahi in using their smaller sailing canoes to get down the awa and to test some of these different sites. And so that kind of comes from a relationship through some of our friends over in marine science at the University of Otago, being able to come in as kai pūtaia to tautoko that kaupapa. So around that pātai, again, because we've got this awesome access to a network of researchers in kai pūtaia, that's part of what Tangaroa Ara Rau is also really passionate about, linking whānau and communities up, because we really want to enable whānau hapu iwi to be able to hold that mana and do that sort of thing for themselves. So for that wahine who asked that pātai, feel free to shoot us an email. Anō hoki ki tērā tauira e whai anei te tohu pairangi, tohu pairua, aroha mai a te rātou. Miharo, it's awesome to hear another tauira's entering into this mahi. What I would say is we've got some existing examples similar to your mahi. And so a colleague of ours, Dr. Chanel Phillips, she did her master's looking at mahinga kai, specifically in the Ngai Tahurohi, as we were based down at Otago, and that is a very rich source of a similar nature, looking at how mahinga kai is essential for hauora in that part of the motu. But the same thing, yeah, definitely feel free to shoot us an email, and we're happy to link up and have kōrero with you, share our experiences, not only around the master's journey, but yeah, with other existing, I guess, resources that help share how others have approached that take as well.
Kia ora, kia ora. And I think one of the things I noticed when I travel around the country with dive courses is that a lot of whānau are wanting research and data. Yeah, they want to know how we can train our divers, our marae divers who are out there collecting kai, how they can collect data, you know, power sizes, power amounts, and so on, but also seaweed. You know, up in north at Ngāti Wai at the moment, there's an invasive seaweed up there. I took one of the young guys, Xavier, up north with me from Otago, who works for Otago University and works for Ngaitahu, and he collects data on seaweed. So it's about understanding the environmental kaupapa that our whānau are wanting and how they can protect the taiao.
Oh, tēnā kōrua. Another pātai here, kia koe he tēnei Terina. What tikanga processes have you come up with for tamariki on entering and exiting the wai, whether in a pool, awa, moana, and other bodies of water?
Kia ora, yeah, that's a awesome pātai. At the moment, we are, so we're learning a karakia that we are going to use specifically here for Otaki when we are entering the awa space. When we take all the kids down, we'll always be doing karakia before we enter the water, and it'll be similar at the pool. We'll be doing the same thing with karakia that I was gifted by my cousin, who's also the tumuaki of our kura. But something that I do with my nephews, I'm not sure that it is tikanga, but I think it is tikanga, is that we will go down and we'll make sure that we acknowledge the wai space. We don't just go down and jump in. So we'll go down, and I'll talk my nephews through it too. I won't like tell them what to do or anything, but we just talk through how the wai is looking, because we go down often enough to see how the wai changes every time we're down there. And so it will be just like talking about what the wai looks like now, how the depths have changed, like just feeling the wai, making sure it's an appropriate temperature to be getting in, just looking at the color of the wai, the current, and even seeing like the rocks, how they've changed, not so much changed, but like the depths that the wai is raising and things like that. So it's just something important that we will be doing is just around making sure that we are acknowledging the space that we're in. And it will be same with when we go to the pools. That's very different because there's rules and regulations, and the pool is very still. There's no, it's like a safe space with still water, and so we'll still be doing the same thing where we'll be acknowledging the rules of the pools, the rules that the lifeguards are giving us. They'll enter the water in the same way that you're allowed to at the pools, but yeah, that's all we have at the moment, but it is a work in progress, and so that is something that I'll be looking to achieve too as we go on. But yeah, the main part too is just respecting the why before we get in, and then having those skills so that we can come out safely.
And I suppose to add to that, Terina, is like I dive myself in, as opposed to just looking at external factors. Part of respecting mahinga kai and the practice itself is, are you in the right space? Are you here as a person, as the diver? Are you good to go? Are you fit? Are you able to dive at the depths that you're about to go to, whether it's scuba diving? Are you ready for the pressures that are down there? If there isn't that respect for mahinga kai, then you start losing some of these tikanga, which in turn you can get into a little bit of trouble there. You start pushing things a little bit too far. You start pushing your body just a little bit too far. Say, oh no, it's sweet as. But it's things like you didn't hydrate enough the day before, or your body isn't ready to carry all these your sack of muscles back to wherever you walked from, to and from. And ka whara te tinana, you end up with injuries. And so they'll just add into as you were talking about the external factors of water safety, there's also the consideration for yourself as the person harvesting the kai. At the same time, ka huripa kia koe raba, I must have sparked something. I see you've unmuted there, Mel Pai tēnā.
Yeah, no, yeah. Pai tērā kōrero, it's about the whole or the tangata, and as I mentioned before, when we have a look at the data, over the last number of years, it's been men between 55 and 65 who have drowned kohi kai. So somewhere in there, men of that age need to make sure that they pass that mātauranga on to the next generation, so that we potamara ourselves. I would love to be 65, 70, sitting on my porch, and someone like Ranginui dropping me off a kai. Beautiful, because that means my job is done. As a teacher, the tuakana taina space is complete, because it's come full circle. And I think for our Māori whānau, especially for our male, we don't like to hand that stuff over, because we think that we lose mana. Where actually the mana is passing your mātauranga and passing your knowledge on to the next generation. So this is what we need to have a look at. And one of the things that we looked at before was, when we go onto the water and we put a life jacket on, let's put our spiritual life jacket on. And that was a conversation that I had with Taitimu Trust, with Mark Perikahu, with Zach McQuarrie, with others, before we put the physical life jacket on. And it's kōrero that you're talking about, which is making sure that our tapawhā, and we identify our tapawhā, is in the same space that our atua are at the moment when we enter the water in kohi kai. Kia ora.
Boy, tēnā koe. And couple more, Zach McQuarrie, you've been mentioned a couple of times, and mihi ana kia koe, and your involvement in this kaupapa, this is his pātai kia tātou. What's next for communities in the next 25 years? Māori communities struggle to protect mahinga kai activities. So what's next? What's next for communities, next 25 years?
Well, pātai pai te Zach. Yeah, great pātai. 25 years, what do we want to see? Well, we want to see our whānau more sustainable. We want to see kai, and I have an understanding of what that looks like for the environment. We're talking about sediment within the environment. We're talking about stunted power. We're talking about all of the moha of Tangaroa. And then for our tamarika mokopuna, because I think fellows like Zach and I might be lucky if we're here in 25 years, is making sure that we pass that mātauranga on to the next generation. We talk about, we don't want to take too much kai because there'll be nothing left for our next generation. But it's about making sure that we understand that kōrero of kai ruku and kai o te rangatira, and then what that looks like. I think that we can have a lot more push within government to get a lot more funding for ourselves as Māori, as our Indigenous right and connection to that space, so that we can build relationship and have stronger relationships with our communities and our hapu. And I think in 25 years' time, hapu and marae and iwi will have their own water safety spaces.
Tēnā koe, and kutahi anō te pātai before we end our kōrero is, will you be attending or holding a Toi Ako tinana? Be amazing for our hauora Māori workforce to learn. Toi Ako.
So, or just on that, I guess one of the kaupapa that we shared previously is the Waves Conference. So that's a sort of recreation Aotearoa, and Rob and Terina working really hard to put together a Tangaroa Ara Rau stream for that. So that's happening in Kirikiriroa at the start of September, 6th to the 8th. So that might be of interest to some whānau working within the sector. But also we've got a really close relationship with our whānau Dario and the whānau at Toi Tangata. And aside from us too, as we mentioned, there's a number of other whānau working within the space of our wai. So yeah, that would be awesome. And we'll get our Barada to put that into the plans for some of the upcoming in-person wānanga, because we'd love to share and also hear from our whānau out there doing the important mahi around the motu.
Arawe, ka pai. He te whānau that we'll run a wānanga Tangaroa Ara Rau in partnership with Toi Tangata, so you sort of just made more mahi for me, actually. Tēnā koutou e tuari nei I tēnei kaupapa rangatira. As you were saying, Matua Rob, you can't stress any more water safety and our connection with Tangaroa, with Tāne, in these different spaces as customary, as mahinga kai, as we consider that as part of our customary practices. We've got tikanga revolving around, we've got pūrākau around mahinga kai that have relevance and connection to the underpinnings of who we are as Māori, and a example, it's how we show manaakitanga. It's how we show manaakitanga, it's how we show identity. What is te tai rāwhiti without kaimoana? Nō reira, those correlations that we have as people, as iwi to the land, kāre tae te whakawehewehe. You can't sever those bonds. Nō reira, thank you for bringing to the forefront of conversations the safety aspect, but also everything that we encompass as hauora. Through identity, through taha tinana, te taha wairua, taha hinengaro, and its consideration ki a Tangaroa I tēnei rā. Nō reira, mihi ana ki a koutou tira, ki a koutou ngā kai whakarongo I tēnei rā. Nei, those of you who attended today, I've added a few links to videos, to their website, to their Facebook page, to the Instagram page, for you all to add, to follow, just to keep up to date with the many cool kaupapa that the Tangaroa Ara Rau whānau are delivering across the motu, across the world. Nō reira, e mihi ana kia koutou katoa I tēnei rā, hua noa nei mātou e mihi atu nei, kia pai te rā, kia tātou katoa, tēnā rā tātou katoa, kia ora rā, ka kite.